of the pandemic. Today, we are going to be discussing an issue that, in my view, is of enormous consequence, both morally and economically, but it is an issue that gets far too little discussion, and that is the crisis of income and wealth inequality in our country. The simple truth is that today in America, the very, very rich are getting much richer, while tens of millions of working-class Americans are struggling to put food on the table and take care of their basic needs. This morning, we are going to learn why it is that the middle class in our country, once the envy of the world, whole world looked to the United States and saw a growing and strong middle class, but why it is that great middle class has been in decline for decade after decade after decade, while at the same time there has been a massive transfer of wealth from working families to the top 1%, an issue that needs to be discussed. We're going to be talking about why it is that during this horrific pandemic, 63% of our workers have been living paycheck to paycheck, worried that if somebody in the family gets sick or the car breaks down, they will be thrown into financial desperation because they don't have the money to pay those bills. Meanwhile, same exact time, 660 billionaires, richest people in America, have become $1.3 trillion richer. So during the pandemic, millions of people are struggling to put food on the table. Handful of billionaires are becoming much richer. We're going to talk about the obscenity of the 50 wealthiest Americans now owning more wealth than the bottom half of our society. 50 people, half of our people, 160 million people. While at the same time, over 90 million Americans are uninsured, have no health insurance, or are underinsured, can't afford to go to a doctor when they get sick. Is that the America that we want? I don't think so. We'll be asking about how it happens that the top 1/10 of 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. 1/10 of 1%, more wealth than the bottom 90%. And two individuals, Bezos and Musk, now own more wealth than the bottom 40%. And meanwhile, we're looking at more hunger in America than at any time in decades. Incredibly, if income inequality had remained the same as it was in 1975, the average worker in America would be making $42,000 more today than he or she is earning. Instead, as the number of billionaires explodes, the average worker in America is now making $32 a week less than he or she made 48 years ago after adjusting for inflation. So you got a huge explosion in technology, worker productivity, average worker today making less in real dollars than they did 48 years ago. And today we're going to be talking about what it means morally and economically when one person in this country, the wealthiest person in the world, Jeff Bezos, has become $77 billion richer during this horrific pandemic while denying hundreds of thousands of workers who work at Amazon paid sick leave and hazard pay. As you may know, I asked Mr. Bezos to testify at this hearing. He declined my invitation, and that's too bad. Because if he was with us this morning, I would ask him the following question. And that is, Mr. Bezos, you are worth $182 billion. That's a B. $182 billion. You're the wealthiest person in the world. Why are you doing everything in your power to stop your workers in Bessemer, Alabama, from joining a union so that they can negotiate for better wages, better benefits, and better working conditions? While Mr. Bezos would not be with us today to answer those questions, We are going to hear from Jennifer Bates, an Amazon worker in Bessemer, Alabama, who will tell us what it's like to work for one of the most profitable corporations in America and why she and her co-workers are trying to form a union there. But let's be clear, Amazon and Jeff Bezos are not alone. The American people are increasingly disgusted with the corporate greed they are experiencing every single day. They're sick and tired of corporate CEOs who now make 320 times more than their average employees, while at the same time give themselves big bonuses, all kinds of golden parachutes, and yet they cut back on the health care that their workers have. They want corporations to invest in workers, in decent wages, benefits, and working conditions, not just higher dividends, stock buybacks, and outrageous compensation packages for their executives. And that is why I am introducing legislation today to impose an income inequality tax on corporations that pay their CEOs over 50 times more than their average workers. It has always been true, of course, that CEOs make more than their employees. But what has been going on in recent years is totally absurd. In 1965, CEOs of large corporations made just 20 times as much as their average workers. Today, those CEOs now make over 300 times, and in some cases, over 1,000 times more than their average workers. That is absurd, that is wrong, and that has got to change. Now, when we talk about the need to protect the working class in this country and to address the crisis of income and wealth inequality, there is an enormous amount of work that Congress has got to undertake. We need to raise that minimum wage to a living wage. Nobody who works 40 hours a week should live in poverty, and that living wage should be at least $15 an hour. We need to make it easier for workers to join unions, not harder. The massive increase in wealth and income inequality today can be directly linked to the decline in union membership in America. We need to create millions of good-paying jobs, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, bridges, wastewater plants, sewers, culverts, building the affordable housing that our people need. We need to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel. And when we fight to protect our kids and this planet from climate change, we also create millions of good-paying jobs. We need to guarantee and do what every other major country on earth does, and that is to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Health care is a human right, not a privilege. We need to make sure that all of our young people in this country have the right to get a higher education regardless of their income. And yes, we need to make sure that the wealthiest people and large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. Now, I know that my Republican colleagues have a different view. I suspect that Senator Graham will disagree with one or two things that I've said, may be wrong about that. But at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, I do not believe that we should be giving more tax breaks to the rich. In fact, amazingly enough, maybe we can discuss this, several of my Republican colleagues in the Senate, including Majority Leader McConnell, introduced a bill to repeal the estate tax, legislation that would provide $1.7 trillion in tax breaks to the billionaire class while doing nothing to helping working families or family farms. Let's be clear, repealing the estate tax would only benefit the top 0.1% who inherit over $11.7 million. 99.9% of the American people would not receive a penny if this legislation became law. So, bottom line is, today we are discussing a huge issue that has broad implications for every person in this country, and I look forward to our panelists' presentation and to the discussion. Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing we will agree on is that you believe this. You have been the most consistent